Somewhere in Afghanistan, there is a building that doesn't exist. No address, no sign, no record. In November 2002, a man was taken there. He was never charged with a crime, never given a lawyer, never seen by a judge. He was given a concrete floor, a stress position, and a temperature just cold enough. By morning, he was dead. The CIA officer who ordered it got a bonus. His name was Gul Rahman, and the United States government spent the next 12 years making sure you never heard it. This is the story of the prison that didn't exist, the man who died inside it, and the system that was built from day one specifically so that nobody would ever have to answer for any of it. But how does a democracy build a machine like this? To understand what happened inside that building, you have to go back to the morning everything changed. September 11th, 2001 didn't just kill 3,000 people, it killed the rulebook.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
And somewhere in a windowless office in Washington, a group of lawyers got to work. Their job wasn't to prevent torture. Their job was to make it legal. The CIA needed somewhere to put the people they were about to start capturing. Somewhere outside the reach of American law, outside the reach of military courts, outside the reach of the Red Cross. They found it north of Kabul, an abandoned brick factory. Remote, structureless, invisible. They called it the Salt Pit, and they handed it to a junior CIA officer who had never run a prison before in his life. Not because he was qualified, because in a building that doesn't exist, qualifications don't matter. Here's what happened when you arrived at the Salt Pit. No intake form, no photograph, no fingerprints logged, your name gone. As far as the legal world was concerned, you had simply stopped existing. The CIA had a term for this: ghost detainees. Present in body, erased in every other way that the law recognizes. The International Red Cross, which under the Geneva Conventions had the legal right to access every wartime detainee, was never told these men existed. Some of those men later reported not knowing what country they were in, how long they'd been held, whether anyone on Earth knew they were still alive, and the techniques used inside those cells. Lawyers had already written the paperwork to make them legal. Unless the pain reached the level of, and I want you to really hear this, organ failure or death, it wasn't classified as torture. That was the system. That was the policy. That was the law. And on November 19th, 2002, Gul Rahman was about to find out exactly what it was worth. Now, I need you to forget the policy for a moment. Forget the legal memos. Forget the classified documents. Forget the government buildings and the men in suits. Think about one man, one cell, one night. But before I tell you what happened inside that building, I need you to know who Gul Rahman was before any of this. He had a wife. He had children who called him home for dinner. He had neighbors who knew his name. He had a favorite time of day. He was 36 years old. He had never been charged with a crime, never been tried, never been convicted. He was suspected. In 2002, inside the system the CIA had built, that was all it took. That man, that specific, irreplaceable, 36-year-old human being is who was chained to that floor on November 19th, 2002. Not a ghost detainee, not a file number, not a case study in a Senate report. A father, and here is what they did to him. That night, a CIA officer made a decision. Rahman would be subjected to sleep deprivation, cold water dousing, reduced rations. Then he would be dragged back to his cell, shackled in a stress position, hands bound behind him, body unable to fully rest against the floor. He was left wearing only a shirt, the cell temperature near freezing. Nobody checked on him through the night. When guards opened that cell door the following morning, Gul Rahman was dead. Cause of death, hypothermia. He had frozen to death, alone, in the dark, in a building that didn't exist, for reasons that were never proven in any court on Earth. His family, his wife, his children received no phone call, no letter, no notification of any kind. And the officer who ordered his treatment that final night was recommended for a $2,500 cash bonus. It was approved. He never saw a courtroom, he never saw a lawyer, he never saw mourning. And somewhere in Afghanistan, that chair has been empty for 23 years. Here's what happened after Gul Rahman died. Nothing. No arrest, no investigation, no press conference. The CIA's internal review found problems, documented concerns, and then filed it. Gul Rahman's name vanished from public record. His family waited, and the salt pit kept operating. In fact, the network grew. Black sites opened across 5 continents. Ghost detainees moving between them on unmarked aircraft, rendition flights with falsified flight plans, landing at civilian airports in the dead of night. Human beings, hooded, shackled, passing through the airports of America's closest allies, while those allies stood at podiums and told their citizens they knew nothing. And inside Washington, the lie was getting more complex. Senior CIA officials appeared before oversight committees, answered questions, gave detailed, confident, carefully worded answers that were, according to the Senate's own investigation, inaccurate, incomplete. In plain language, they lied to the people whose entire constitutional purpose was to stop exactly this from happening. And then came the tapes. 92 videotapes, recording every interrogation session, every technique, every face. In November 2005, as public pressure began to build, CIA Director Jose Rodriguez made a decision. He ordered every single tape destroyed. 92 tapes, gone. And for 3 more years after that, the United States government didn't even publicly admit the tapes had existed. Gul Rahman had been dead for 3 years before anyone outside the CIA knew his name. He would be dead for 12 before the truth had anywhere to go. There is a specific kind of courage that nobody makes movies about. Not the courage of a battlefield. Not a single explosive moment where instinct takes over before fear arrives. This courage is slower, quieter, less glamorous. It's the courage of reading 6 million pages of classified documents, knowing the institution those documents belong to is actively watching you do it. Because that's exactly what happened. While Senate investigators reviewed CIA documents inside a secure facility, the CIA was secretly monitoring their computers. The agency being investigated for human rights abuses was spying on the people investigating it. By 2014, there was a new CIA director, John Brennan, who held a press conference implying Senate staff had broken the law. He was wrong. He sent a private letter of apology. No press conference for that one. December 9th, 2014, Senator Dianne Feinstein stood on the Senate floor and released 525 pages, 6,700 pages in full, still classified, still locked, still hidden. And for the first time in 12 years, Gul Rahman's name was in a public document. Then almost nothing happened. No indictments, no prosecutions. The officer who ordered his final night promoted. The lawyers who wrote the memos back in private practice. Some went back to teaching law. Senator Feinstein called it a stain on our values and our history. She was right, but here's what a stain actually means. A stain means you can live with it. You point at it, say, that was wrong, and keep going. A stain doesn't require justice. It doesn't require anyone to stand before a judge. A stain is, in its own terrible way, a form of closure. His family never received a letter, never received a phone call, never received a single sentence from the most powerful government on earth. They are still waiting. And somewhere tonight, authorized by a memo you haven't read, inside a building with no address, the question of what a government will do when it decides the rules no longer apply is not a historical question. It is happening right now. If this story should exist, share it, because forgetting is exactly what they were counting on. And if this is the first time you're hearing Gul Rahman's name, drop it in the comments, because he deserves to be remembered, not as a case number, not as a footnote, by name. And if you want to know about the other names they buried, subscribe, because there are more. But before you leave, tap the video on the screen to discover about Mexico's most dangerous robbery.